Okay, well, Josh, you can call me a straight shooter or you can say I'm bluffing, but I gotta say, this is probably one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever.
I don't know, Alex. I think you might be bluffing.
Well, Klingons never bluff, so.
Yeah, but Alex, you're not a Klingon.
I've never had such strong feelings toward anyone.
Two brave warriors test the courage of their private passions.
We are mated.
I am not going to become your wife.
Now, they must join forces to prevent a Klingon attack.
Drop your shields.
On Star Trek, The Next Generation.
Hey, we're back from the teaser.
We got to start off by praising Susie Plaxton as Kalar, the love interest of Worf, half Klingon, half human, female. I mean, one of the best guest performances of the series.
Yes, I think one thing the show does, it often puts like all its marbles into its guest performance, and sometimes it's either great or it's sometimes just garbage. But this is like the best guest performance of Star Trek possibly ever. I mean, it's so captivating and interesting, and like this whole episode just flowed like water. I was super interested, and like Michael Dorn also, just like every time they put the ball in Michael Dorn's court of like, hey, this is your episode, this is a Klingon episode. It's just always like the best episode of Star Trek ever. It's like, why don't they always do this? I mean, if every episode was a Klingon episode, it gets sick. But it's like it's like they just can't miss when it comes to Klingons and Worf. And Kalar was just like an amazing character. And as soon as like they came on screen together, I'm like, and there was that presence like, oh, something's up. It's like I just wanted to know everything about their. It's like it was so captivating. It was like amazing Star Trek.
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts right off with Worf at the beginning because we're once again opening with a poker scene.
I'll go 5.
5 here.
And 5 more.
We open it up, and this time Worf is at the poker table. And I thought it was funny because we joked when we watched that episode, The Royale, about Worf, like every single hand, all in.
But there's no half measures, all in.
And he wasn't that aggressive, but he was pretty aggressive at the poker table, you know, raising every time until it was just him and Pulaski, and Worf ends up winning the hand.
Yeah, and they kind of tease a little love interest there almost. I think Pulaski calls him handsome, and Worf's like, I'm kind of into it. I'm okay with that. And it kind of teases like the rest of the episode where it's like, oh, Klingons never bluff. And that pays off later.
And we were thinking, man, imagine just an entire poker episode. But then no, Riker gets called to the bridge, something's going on.
And it's like, oh, there's a Starfleet emergency. We're like, it's like, I understand for like TV at this time, 1989 or whatever, that an episode of people just like, on streaming, that could totally get away with it. An episode of just like, in fact, there's episodes like The Last of Us. There's episodes of the show where it's like the main characters aren't even in it. You know what I mean? So I feel like an entire episode of 45 minutes of them playing poker, telling stories, getting heated, and all this, forming little mini rival, like that would be an amazing episode of Star Trek. Maybe that's something that happens like in, I don't know, Strange New Worlds or something, but like I would totally be down for that. But this is 1989 TV, you gotta hook the audience in. There was a problem.
Yeah, but, you know, thankfully, I'm not going to complain with the episode we got. Imagine if that was the opening going into a bad episode. Then you'd really be like, oh man, should have stayed there.
Yeah. Luckily, the episode turned out to be one of the best ever.
Yeah. Is that going to be a running theme? Anytime it opens with a poker scene, you get an amazing episode, Measure of the Man in this, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
If Cliff Bole directs it, and there's always a poker scene. Cliff Bole, shout out to Cliff Bole. Great direction in this. Some classic, in the middle of a conversation, cuts to another scene, continuing the conversation.
There are 2 possibilities. First, we find the ship before it reaches the awakening point. In that case, we simply keep the crew asleep.
Great stuff.
Great stuff too, just throughout the whole episode with the direction, as we'll get to. So then once they get up to the bridge, we get to see a classic, someone from Starfleet come on the view screen, tell Picard, oh, you got to pick this person up from a space probe, but we can't tell you anything. It's like, oh, always a great help, Starfleet.
It's like, oh, great. And for me, like, at first I was like, oh, of course. But it's like, okay, after the whole incident with, like, that species that crawled in their ears, it's like, okay, I understand wanting to have these, you know, super secret missions. But in reality, the whole point is for that Klingon reveal. And I love the Klingon reveal. It worked so well in the episode in season 1 where you think it's Romulans, where it's like, and then the zoom to Klingons. It's like, oh shit, and it worked well in this one because person beams over in this 2 meter basically pod and wearing a mask. It's like, oh, slowly unhook it, reveal the mask, and not only is it a Klingon but a female Klingon. It's like, whoa, shit.
Yeah, absolutely, and it does actually connect and go back to making sense. Of course, they would keep that a secret because I don't know of any other Klingons that are a high up position in Starfleet. You have Worf, who's just on the Enterprise because he was raised by humans and his whole story, but this person, you find out she's half human, so it kind of makes sense. But yeah, it would make sense they would keep that a secret because, Klingons get pissy. And, you could see them being like, oh, traitor, go blow her up in space, So that does make sense. It's like, okay. Yeah, so we get this introduction, and right away, as soon as she sees Worf, they already start talking and, kind of teasing that they had a prior romance, and it's, oh, what are the odds? She goes to the one ship Worf's on.
So this is where you've been hiding. I told you we'd meet again.
Of course, it's how it works, and it's always on the Enterprise where all the problems. I'm just wondering what all these other ships. It must be so boring on these other ships. That's why Riker refused command of another ship. He's like, I gotta go to the Enterprise. All the fun happens here.
Yeah.
All these other ships are boring. All the problems happen to the Enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, like Picard even said to him, like, you'll be in an irrelevant corner of space. Like, no, be here on the Enterprise.
Yeah, we run into garbage problems every time.
And then let's also talk about the costuming in this episode, from everything that Kalar gets to wear in this one.
Like 3 or 4 different outfits.
Yeah.
The Starfleet officer we see for 4 seconds, like she had a cool little special garb that was different from her usual Starfleet uniform. Like, oh, that's nice.
And then towards the end, when Worf and Kalar dress up as the Klingon captains per se.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of costuming in this one, which I love. I always love that, production stuff.
Yeah, and we get to see 2, or at least 1 familiar foe in the holodeck with the Skeletor. Skeletor's back. Love it.
Kalar, she explains to Troy, which was a great scene, how she has her human side, her mom's sense of humor, which is fully on display in this episode. Great from the actress in showing that.
Mm-hmm.
Unwilling to be alone with me.
And then on her Klingon side from her dad, the anger of the Klingon and her temper. So Troy recommends the holodeck to her, and we get to once again see the exercise that we saw in the early Season 2 episode where Silence Has Lease, where Worf and Riker were in there. Now she's in there fighting Skeletor, and this time we get like a bird creature.
Yeah, it looks like a bug almost. He's got these wings or whatever, and this is one of the first times where I noticed the writing on the holodeck. Like we were both like, "What is that?"
Yeah, let's get that pulled up actually. All right, so we have it pulled up here. So we got scuba diving. Don't think we've seen that. The Klingon Rite of Ascension. We saw that recently. Yeah. Calisthenics, Worf. Shikar Desert Survival. Shikar.
That's on Vulcan, yeah.
Shikar. That sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
Carnival Celebration, Earth, Racetrack in France, and then 2 Dixon Hills, the Long Dark Tunnel and the Black Orchid.
That's so cool. I mean, it was on there for 2 seconds, so I gotta appreciate that. They thought in hindsight that, 30s, 40 something years later, that 2 assholes would pause and look at it like, wait a second, what does that say? It could have just been gibberish or whatever. So I appreciate them actually putting stuff on there. That's super fun.
Yeah, and then as Kalar is in there, Worf then joins, kind of just on his own, wasn't invited, but comes in, and then they team up.
It's not much of a program.
Computer, level 2.
They team up and take out these creatures, and then just have sex in the holodeck. We've kind of questioned it before, sex in the holodeck. Clearly it happens.
It's the best place to do it, even though we made a joke, what if, having sex and then just fucking Picard walks in, what's going on? Oh my God, it's
yeah.
That's probably why they don't have that happen, because anyone could walk in at
There's got to be a lock the door setting.
You'd think so,
yeah.
But with the amount of problems they've had with the holodeck, I think a lock the door setting is probably the last thing they want.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
You don't want that malfunction.
Yeah, after an officer getting shot and almost dying, it's
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe we shouldn't lock the door, so don't do anything sexually or weird in there. But yeah, basically it's pretty much implied that they do have sex, and good for Worf. And I love the whole, they're Kalar's piercing her hand, feeling pain. Wouldn't Worf say he would destroy a human woman from sex?
Yeah.
And then that makes me think of like Kalar's parents, because it made mention that the father was Klingon, and the mom was human. So it's like, was this like human woman like badass? Like, is that all you got? And like they just fucking went at it. It's like, and it like, I'm so curious to like what was the dad in her dad similar, like Sarek? Was he cold at first and then he came around later?
Yeah, it's
You know what I
very
mean?
interesting.
Because Sarek, definitely came around later as Spock was an adult. You know what I mean? Like more, like not full on, like, oh, my son, but like showed it in his own way. So was her dad like? I would love to see that relationship.
Yeah, and it seems like Kalar is very much on the human side personality-wise. It seems like she has the physical representation of Klingon, but her whole personality is human, saying things to Worf like, you're just like every other Klingon, so stubborn, So it very much kind of airs on the human side of it seems like, for how she acts and feels. And that's what causes their main tension, is that Worf is a full-on Klingon, even after they mate, and he's like, well, now we're getting married, and he's doing this oath. And she's like,
whoa!
Yeah, she's like, no, we just hooked up.
I am not going to become your wife!
You already are.
So I guess we should talk about the actual plot of the episode besides this romance. So basically there's this Klingon ship. It's been like traveling in like hibernated space travel for like 75 years. It's like, okay, and the ship was like lost, right? But then all of a sudden the ship is found, and these Klingons have been in hibernation for like 75 years. So they think that the Federation and the Klingon Empire are still like bat to bat. And she's like, there's no dealing with these Klingons. You just got to destroy them. And I love Picard's whole like, no, that's not an option. There's always another option. And like I think even Worf reciprocates that. There's always another way. And I like how Worf is like that as well. He's so Klingon-ish, but he also has that Starfleet. It's like there's like that Picard's in his brain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's been raised, in Starfleet.
It's like taking the Klingon, stubbornness and anger, but infusing it with the Starfleet beliefs that he grew up with.
Yes, exactly. I find that whole thing fascinating. Like I think we briefly mentioned this as well, but I love the whole like Kalar being half human, half Klingon, raised by both, and then there's Worf, raised by humans, but full on Klingon. So that whole dynamic is interesting. But I find that Kalar is so like, no, there's no chance.
Talking will be a waste of time. Klingons of that era were raised to despise humans.
But at some point, the Klingons did come to reason, so you have to think like maybe these people can be reasoned with as well, because at some point Klingons did come to reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I understand her point of like, oh, they're not aware of that, but she just doesn't have a very high opinion of Klingons. It seems like she really is more bought into the human side.
Yeah.
Kind of like the opposite of Spock, where Spock wanted to reject his humanity and be full Vulcan. That was like his whole battle.
Yeah.
She's kind of the opposite, where she just doesn't. She like rejects the Klingon side of it. It seems. So I think that played into it as well. But I was actually kind of surprised. I mean, yeah, I didn't expect Picard to come right out and be like, killed him. But he was really hell-bent on, like risking the life of everyone on board to not kill the Klingons.
But the resolution of that is one of my favorite. Worf and Kalar in these like classic Star Trek 3-esque, costumes where it's like, because Picard's like, okay, what's the solution? There's always a solution. Oh, here's the solution. We'll put Worf in charge of the Enterprise, and it will trick them.
What is this? Captain Katemak, have you lost your mind?
It plays back to the poker game where it's like Klingons never bluff, and what does he do? He's bluffing.
He's bluffing.
He's bluffing.
And I love that he came up with the idea and was like, sir, I have an idea, and then it just cuts to it.
Oh yeah, like the Cliff Bowl direction where it just cuts in and it happens. Because before it shows Riker and Picard in their seats like this, like what he suggests, and then it cuts to them on the view screen, the Klingons, classic Star Trek 3 Klingons, and then it cuts back to our view screen, and it's Kalar and Worf in these cool costumes, like, oh, what?
And they looked awesome. I mean, they looked like a power couple.
Yes.
It was great.
Yes.
So then that whole thing happens, and I love the little interaction between Worf and Picard and Riker after that, where Picard's like, pretty good for your first... Like, they treat it seriously, like, as if he were actually in command of the Enterprise. It wasn't like a joke to them.
Right.
How did you like command?
Comfortable chair.
Yeah. So I loved all that.
Oh, so great.
And also glad that they did that and then went to the ending of Worf and Kalar at the end instead of switching it and trying to do that goofy stuff at the end.
Yes, trying to end with the engage. That's fine, but no, I needed the ending between Kalar and Worf, and boy, did they fucking stretch it.
Maybe someday I won't be so easy to get rid of.
And they stretched it to such a good amount to the point where I thought like they weren't going to like get close or embrace or have it. Like they made us wait for it so long, and like it ends with that like that heart-ripping scene. Like,
I will not be complete without you.
oh, Worf, you poor guy.
Yeah, and great from both actors. Great score in this whole episode as well. And again, weird theme throughout this season of like when they have a great episode, there just also happens to be great score. And for a lot of the episodes we don't care about, it's just dead silent. It's like, did they know making the show? I still was like weird.
It's like they looked at the script and like, let's not put any score. We don't need a score for this one. This one's shit.
Yeah. Oh, they're talking about the Prime Directive. Yeah, we don't. But yeah, it's just crazy to me, going into this show. So a little bit of history on myself for TOS, Klingons to me and TOS were just like whatever. Like I didn't care for a lot of the Klingon episodes, and I was like all in on Romulans. And then going into TNG, I was like, oh, there's a Klingon on the ship. Okay, what? Like I'm sure he's just in the background, whatever. And it's like honestly, Worf might be my favorite character at this point. I mean, it started off as Geordi, but like Worf had my favorite episode of season 1, and like this might be my favorite of season 2. I mean, and he's great in both of them. So I'm shocked by that if that carries through the rest of the series, if he ends up being my favorite. But yeah, really love him.
Yeah, Data started off as my favorite because I just fell in love with him right away.
And
like
he's great.
And he's great. Brent Spiner is amazing, but like Worf has had every great episode of TNG. It's all fallen on his back, and he's carried the best episodes. Like strongly. I'm like, fuck, Worf might be my favorite as one, my favorite character as well. I will say what this episode missed is definitely with the whole like having problems with relationships, women. I just felt like with Riker pretty much being his best friend, there should have been one scene where they talked about it.
You're
know
like,
what I mean?
Hey man, yeah.
Like, especially like Riker being like number one first man. He should definitely be like the guy to give like advice in this situation. It's like, well, I've had experiences, with working with women you work with. You know what I mean? I felt like there's only so much you can pack in 45 minutes, but I feel like they definitely should have had that.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that it's almost like a headcanon, like you wish happened in the episode, but it almost seems like it was something that was cut out, Like it definitely could have happened. It was so perfect, like, a scene of Worf and Riker in 10 Forward, and Worf even asking him directly, like, how do you work with Troy given your history? Like it could have been the perfect, but it just didn't make the episode. They probably never even thought of this. I'm acting as if they filmed it and it didn't make it in. But
maybe they did. Maybe they did. We've talked about this plenty of times, but there's plenty of episodes where, like, especially with this one, it's like they probably cut some stuff out. And then there's some episodes where it's like,
they're stretching.
They filled that 45 minutes, whatever garbage they can to put it on TV. But and this episode ends with one of my favorite tropes. Not trope, but one of my favorite endings where the credit comes up. And it doesn't end with like a laugh on the bridge. It ends with that somber, damn.
And Worf saying, I won't be complete without you.
God.
Dude is in love. And I hope that they wrote this with the intention of bringing back K'Ehleyr. And
I gotta hope so.
And she was so great that I really hope she comes back. And I wish she was a main character of the show. Like, would having 2 Klingons on the ship be too much with how many characters we already have? Maybe
she's human enough where they can make it work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's not even like not being human's a deal breaker or anything, but it's just like I get it. You already have a lot of characters, and they had to shed a few to try to make it make sense. But just great episode all around, and I really have basically no complaints outside of wishing that we got that scene you're talking about. But that aside, with the episode we got, I have no complaints.
Yeah, no complaints at all. Just from all. Yeah, no, it's like I understand that. I can't even think of anything to say. I love this episode.
Well, when we can't think of anything to say, we see what our patrons have to say. We just completely revamped our target demographic tier on our Patreon, and it now includes a ton of great benefits for our patrons. And one of them is a movie lottery that we're holding every month. By becoming a member of the target demographic tier on our Patreon, you will get an entry in that lottery. And every month, we'll be choosing that movie to watch and post full uncut on Patreon. So if there's a non-Star Trek movie out there that you want us to watch, join the target demographic tier on our Patreon and let us know what movie that is. And also enjoy all the other great benefits of that tier, like your name in the credits of our videos, downloadable versions of our uncut reactions, regular participation in our videos through patron takes and top episode lists, and more. Go check it out.
Alex and Josh, feel the target audience.
I'm really sorry I sounded like a salesman in this video. You know, it is what it is. Don't hate the player, hate the game, you know? Alright, well, I'm going to start this one off from the lore. K'Ehleyr was played by the same actress as Dr. Solar, the Vulcan, earlier this season. Apparently, Solar was created as a potential love interest for Worf, but it didn't work out. Seems like they revisited the idea with the same actress playing a Klingon. Which performance of hers did you prefer? And I also want to read this response from Reagan, who said she was also Marshall's mom in How I Met Your Mother, and at Robbie's ex-wife, Joanne, and Everybody Loves Raymond. So we looked up the actress after watching the episode, and I saw that she was Marshall's mom in How I Met Your Mother. How I Met Your Mother is one of my top shows of all time.
Same here.
Might be my top sitcom of all time. And so as soon as I saw that was her, it like clicked, like, oh man, yeah, that is her. I did not recognize her at all as Dr. Solar, though. Do you remember that character from the Data episode with the old man?
Yes, I do. That was her? Really?
According to this, yeah. It looked completely different.
Well, in that case, I definitely prefer this performance.
We praised Dr. Solar.
We praised Dr. Solar, but this was her episode.
Yeah, this was a great
fit.
This
was her episode. Great fit, absolutely. I definitely prefer this as well. She's 6'2". 6'2". 6'2" and gorgeous. All right, this one's from Cat with Attitude. More poker, more Klingon lore. Worf has holodeck sex with K'Ehleyr. I think you'll probably both like her. She may return or she may not. You'll just have to watch and see. The same as any guest star in any episode who doesn't die. This is my final best of the best ranked episode of season 2. That's a take that I 100% agree with.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the poker was great for sure. And I guess Klingon lore in the sense of knowing that Klingons can have babies with humans, because I definitely did not know that before.
I'd love to know what help happens. You know, I love that little tidbit, like, oh, with some help, like, oh, what's that help? You know what I mean? Is there like, you know, the opposite of a C-section where they're putting the baby together? I don't know.
This one's from Paul and says, one of the highlights of the season for me, I forgot this was as early as season 2. It fits the vibe of season 3 and later. Let's hope. Let's
That's
pray.
fucking hope. If they're all like this, holy shit, I can see why this show is so popular.
Yeah, if that's the case.
This one's from Brian. K'Ehleyr, and he put in parentheses, said like the lore. Played by the incredibly talented Susie Plaxton, one of my favorite guest stars in this or any other series. When you see the Klingon vessel in this episode, it's just reused footage from the motion picture. Just with some effects added. That's crazy. I love that practical, you know, filmmaking where it's just reuse stuff from other projects. Why not? You know what I mean? I heard they did that in Spider-Man, 2000. Sam Raimi, when Peter Parker's going through the transformation, Sam Raimi used some film from another movie.
Oh,
during his dream sequence or whatever. It's that's great. I love that. I love that whole we'll just use some other film to fill that in. You know what I mean?
Screw it.
Why not?
This one's from Nerds Gold. A Klingon episode. That means it's good. They don't phone in the relationship or the elements of Klingon culture. They actually care what they are building. And I 100% agree. I feel like, especially over the last few episodes, the people making this show, Melinda Snodgrass, whoever else it is, they care. You can just tell they genuinely care about building out this show and not just doing episode of the week every week. And as much as I love TOS, that's what it was for a lot of it. We got great actors, great performances, great writing in that show, but it never felt like they were really trying to build a continuity. You know, it was just these same characters in all these situations. And season 1 TNG was kind of like that too. Mm-hmm. But this season and these past, especially 10 episodes, the episode with Riker's dad, this episode is way better than that as an episode. But you could just tell. It's they're trying to actually build these characters, and that's how I felt with Worf here.
Yeah, I would love to know when continuity became a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's at what point in the television, film history, did they realize, people might rewatch this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. When DVDs started being made?
Yeah. When VHS first came out, it's wait a second. This one's from Smokey. I predict you guys will enjoy this episode since it has Klingons and you enjoy the lore. Always remember, what happens on the holodeck stays on the holodeck.
There you go. That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
Unless someone just walks in on their own accord with no invite.
Yeah, there's no locks on those doors.
You guys have been looking for more score. Well, I think this episode's score really sets the scene well for K'Ehleyr and Worf's relationship, and Susie Plaxton is great in this role. Great episode. Yeah, I praise the score, absolutely, and I think score is so important, especially to TV. I mean, it's very important in movies, but like in TV, to set the tone, and I've heard that TNG doesn't have a lot of great score. That's unfortunate if that's the case.
This one's from Evan. 0 out of 10. K'Ehleyr does not, in quotes, hurl heavy objects, end quote, as part of the mating ritual, as Worf once told Wesley. Damn.
Well, we don't see the whole ritual, so...
That's true. They go to commercial. Who knows how long that was.
They were not allowed to show that whole ritual on TV.
No.
This one's from Bab. K'Ehleyr as a character is fantastic, but I just can't like her. She knew how seriously Worf took Klingon tradition, and she knew exactly what he'd think it meant if they had sex. Hard to interpret that as anything other than leading Worf on. Yeah, speaking strictly from the character standpoint, I was towards the end being like, come on, man, you're just leading him on at this point. And it was starting to get to be like, come on, you kind of know what you're doing. And when she first arrives, she says to him like, oh, you're the reason why we didn't give it a chance. And he's like, me? And that kind of just like set the tone right there where she's not really taking accountability for what she does to Worf and playing with his emotions.
She's not a perfect, she's a great character, but like great characters aren't perfect people.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The best characters are like morally gray. You know what I mean? Like I don't want, like, as much as I love, your Captain America types, you know what I mean? I also like characters with like where I like everything about them, and then you see something like, oh, it's like I love that whole like I love this about him, but like, oh, that part of him sucks. That makes him so interesting.
And it helps you feel for Worf too, because whether you relate to it personally or you can just from the outside see why that sucks. And it's like she has such charisma that you want, you love that chemistry with them, but you also realize like, yeah, maybe this isn't, there's some negatives to this relationship they have going on. Where will it lead? If it leads anywhere, I don't know, but I'd love to see it.
Yeah. I just love how like they were going through the ritual. It's like, oh, we're going through this ritual. It's like, oh, and like throw away our entire jobs, our career. It's like, oh shit, they couldn't work together if that's the case. Is that a rule?
I mean, who knows what else is included in Klingon culture once you become married?
God, yeah, who knows?
You can't leave the ship. We're married. Like I can just see a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. I want to read this one since it's been brought up. This one's from Mike. Another standout season 2 episode, as far as I'm concerned. My biggest question is that does the holodeck have a lock? In my memory, it never seems to be, and it would have made the episode if Riker or someone else walked in on the two of them. Yes, I made that same thing. Like, what if Picard's like, "Hey, Worf, oh my god."
I can see Riker walking in with that damn grin in the middle of that section, just being like, "Room for one more." Well, get the hell out of here.
But he walks in wearing that same costume he had to fight with his dad in.
Oh yeah, like why would you wear that?
Yeah, room for one more. Because he knows he's gonna get thrown around.
Oh yeah, he had to wear the protective. Yeah.
Because K'Ehlyr's gonna fucking toss him into the wall.
Oh, this one's from James. He says, so 2 seasons in, where are TNG's Klingons compared to your expectations at the beginning? As iconic as they were, they sure never got explored like this. I already kind of said what I thought. What
I think the Klingons in TOS were like some of my least favorite episodes.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, ones where like I don't care to remember or care to rewatch, or the parts that I do remember, are just like, they were just like regular people with like little forehead divots. Like, what this show has done for Klingons should be studied. You know what I mean? Because I could not give a single, fuck about Klingons. And then the show is like, I love everything about Klingon culture. I want every episode to be a Klingon-related episode, a Worf-related episode, because I know it's going to be a fucking home run.
Yeah, but I got to bring it up. You got to tip your cap, though, to Star Trek 3. It started it. It
started with Doc Brown. It started with Back to the Future. Like, that definitely started it. Yes, TNG, like, took the ball and ran with it.
Exactly,
But it started with Star Trek 3. You're right. You're absolutely right. Now that I think about it, I'm thinking about Dr. Salar. I am now just seeing, like, yes, that was her.
I can't see it.
I'm like in my brain. I'm picturing her. Like, that was her. Shit.
Andrea also comments on the different roles of Susie Plaxton. It's amazing how different Susie Plaxton's character is from the Vulcan she played in the previous episode. That's range, and I agree. I'm like visualizing Dr. Solar right now, and I remember what she looks like, and I don't see this actress at all. Like, that's blowing my mind.
Like, I'm seeing her like from here down. You know what I mean? I can see that same face, like, oh shit, that was her. But like, yeah, up here, obviously not. And this one's from John. I like the way he put this. I always like an exploration of Klingons and other cultures. Sure, the Enterprise may be seeking out new life and new civilizations, but I like when they fill in detail on civilizations that aren't new.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great way to put it. Great way to put it. I like that as well.
Ryan says, "I will not be complete without you," and then a crying emoji. I think that's how we all felt.
I feel the exact same way. I was on the verge of tearing up watching it because that goodbye was painfully long in the best way.
I wish I could sometimes just like genuinely get more emotional, not like on command, but like more naturally, because like that moment did hit me, you know. But it's like I really need something to get me to actually cry, and you know, I wish for the sake of you guys that I could be more emotive, but I just want to put out there, like, yes, that did really hit me for sure. One of the most emotional moments of the show thus far.
Yeah, luckily I cry pretty well. Like, little side bit here. I finished Red Dead Redemption 2 again.
Oh, congratulations.
And as the ending scene was happening, I set up my phone and recorded it, and I bawled my eyes out on camera. And it was completely natural. Like, I just wanted to see what would happen, and I still ended up crying. So I got that, if anyone wants to see that. This one's from Steven. We kind of brought this up earlier, but this expands on it. This one's from Steven. The poker scene ending with Worf's line, "Klingons never bluff," is a great piece of writing, not only because the solution to the central problem of the episode is a gigantic bluff on the part of Worf and Kalar, but also because it helps explain why the tactic works so well against a Klingon captain who could not expect it. It's like, that's right.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about that second part of the other Klingon, because he does question him at first.
He does question it, but like, yeah.
He ultimately believes him.
He ultimately does believe him. And I love that whole that whole thing was like, all right, fire phasers, wait! Yeah, wait! Yeah, the typical, like, wait!
Yeah, last second. This is from Rich. When I rewatched this one a couple of weeks ago, I thought to myself, Alex is going to fall off his seat when he sees that Skeletor hologram again. Am I right?
Yes! I got so excited.
Yeah, that was great. And then, obviously, we've done nothing but praise this episode, and we've read all of these takes that praise the episode. So I always like, on these highly praised episodes from us and the patrons, to end on one that isn't praising the episode.
Okay, we gotta be fair.
Yeah, always like to show the other side.
Gotta be fair.
So this one's from Nick. Was it just me, or was there a lot of filler in this episode? Shades of Amok Time with the whole surprise wife thing. I found the whole relationship between Worf and Kalar to be way too melodramatic for my liking. Well, I would just say, you can say what you want to say, but Nick, I don't agree with you. But I love to see the different opinions.
I love how you can have a take like that. And in fact, I read your take, and I was going to ignore it. Filling in a part of Worf's past, I can't describe as filler. You know what I mean?
I'd be interested, Nick, on like what exactly you thought was the filler.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's melodramatic. And the whole surprise wife thing is not exactly the same, I would say.
It's not his wife, so.
Yeah, not his wife. I mean, it's like, oh, we're going to be. And I like how she's like, oh, no. It's like, I felt like everything that was said and laid out perfectly flowed and added to the episode. Nothing felt like, it wasn't watching The Mandalorian Season 3, you know what I mean? Nothing felt like filler.
I've never watched that show, so I don't know. But
I've watched like 3 episodes of Season 3. I'm like...
But I think if you, for whatever reason, aren't into that relationship and don't buy into the chemistry, then I can understand why the episode would not appeal to you. That's where I'm going to guess that perspective comes from. But yeah, I mean, I love to see all the different perspectives and takes from the patrons. And with that being said, though, I loved this episode greatly.
Yeah, as you know, we do a list at the very end, and I gotta say, this one is going to be on the list. Like, spoiler alert, like this.
Well, you don't know what's left, but
I don't know what's left. I mean, we have a couple left, but yeah, like, we've been talking about this episode a while. We read like 30 patron takes when sometimes I feel like we read like, maybe 5. So yeah, this episode's making a list.
It's going to be really funny because this discussion isn't going to hit YouTube until after our live stream where we're recapping the whole season.
Okay.
So if you joined us live for that Season 2 recap, You are already spoiled at how we feel about this episode and the next one, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh yeah.
But you know, I'm sure there's a ton of you that weren't there live because that's not going to be even close to everybody. So,
Right.
but I just do think that'll be interesting to see how people. Hopefully, that'll get them excited when we praise it and on that live stream. You're like, oh, I can't wait to see how they, their reaction to it.
Yeah.
We'll have to give a spoiler warning though when we're doing the stream. The patrons will have already seen it, but spoiler.
A spoiler for us for our
A lot of people don't they don't want to be spoiled. They want to go in just like we do, blind to our reactions.
Yeah, it's weird that we have our own category.
Yeah, let's not
Yeah,
get started.
yeah.